Hey rockers, welcome back to another tale. It is a Wednesday night here in Southern Oregon, and wanted to do a little story tonight about a punk rock band that many of you know very well. It's a band called Fear, of course being led by the notorious and legendary Ving. Yeah, man, back in 1993, I traveled from Peoria, Illinois, 2.5 hours north to the town of Chicago, aka the Windy City, and was dying to see the band Fear, as I had never seen them, and they hadn't been on tour for a long time. They had done gigs in California and short stints here and there, but not an extended tour like they were going to be doing. And of course, this was at the Cabaret Metro, Chicago. And the guys were on tour. They, of course, formed in Los Angeles in 1977. But January 30th, 1993, they arrived in Chicago at the Cabaret Metro, and it was pretty awesome, man. I had actually done an interview with Ving for my fanzine before this show, and I told him I was going to be showing up, and he said, hey, say hi to me. And of course, the interview was, a little edgy but fun. And I believe that's on YouTube on my other channel, The Church of Rock. There's at least a couple different interviews I've done with Ving actually on my radio show as well. So The Church of Rock, all one word. Please subscribe there and take a moment to subscribe right here if you would. And maybe give it a like, comment, and share. So we go to Chicago, or I went to Chicago. Don't remember who I went with. Don't remember how I got there, okay? It was 1993. I was 2 months away from having my first child, of course, not me, but my significant other. I ended up meeting some friends there, some legends in rock and roll. As a matter of fact, I met the great Bill Meisner from Bloody Mess and the Scabs and Sub 13. I also met Beautiful Bert, rest in peace, from Beautiful Bert and the Luscious Ones, and Beautiful Bert and the Lipstick Junkies, and the Crotch Crickets, and the BB Slags, and also the legendary and my best friend ever, Dean Dirt, aka Dean Lipke. He was the singer for the band 1096 out of Kenosha, Wisconsin. All of us punk rockers met up in Chicago because Bill Meisner was living there in a loft building where they had these cool lofts, right, where a lot of artists and, partiers and musicians kind of lived. And we decided we were going to hang out and make a night of it and go to the show. So we're all hanging out, walking around Chicago. I know Bill's tripping on Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Bill is tripping. Me and Dean and Bert and the other contingent. There was a lot of people there. Sorry if you were there and I don't remember. If you were, leave your name in the comment below and remind me if you were there with us that night. A lot of people were there. We walked around the alleys in the Windy City. It's such a big, awesome, gigantic city. It kind of sucks you up, man. I mean, not as intense as New York City, but quite intense. Chicago is a trip. So we walked around and we were hanging out, getting ready for the show, drinking, smoking, laughing, as punk rockers will do, making fun of stuff. We're all wearing our leather jackets. We look like a little gang. And all of a sudden, we're walking down the alley, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is where the alley where the Metro's at. And I look over to my right, and there, right in front of us, sitting in his tour vehicle in the passenger seat, Ving from Fear. Yep, the rhythm guitarist and the lead vocalist and the founding member, from what I know. There's Lee. He's sitting there making a set list. So I walk up to him thinking, this will be a cinch. I just interviewed the guy recently. He knows who I am. He said to say hi. Here I am. So I go, come on, guys, let's go talk to Ving. I walk up to the car. I'm like, hey, man, what's up, Bloody? He goes, hey, Bloody. I go, what's up, man? He goes, I'm working on a set list. And he acted like he was a little short-tempered and a little bit irritated, and I expected as much from Ving. He's a very different sort of fellow, although he has mellowed these days, according to people I know that have talked to him recently. And I said, hey, Lee, can I get a quick photo with you? He goes, no, man, I'm busy doing a set list right now. And I'm like, yeah, really? And he goes, look, man, I'll do it after the show, okay? Hit me up after the show. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. I'm never going to get to see this guy after the show. I'll never be able to just accidentally run into Ving again. And he was not cool about it, He wasn't exactly... It's not like he owed me anything, but we were all kind of disappointed, thinking, yeah, whatever. I remember Dean especially saying something witty. I can't sit here and try to paraphrase because I can't recall. That's right. A lot of this story is fuzzy mess. That's me. But we're excited. You know, we were like, oh man, we talked to Lee for a minute or two. He's making a set list. He's too busy to stop and, you know, take a photo for 10 seconds. But that's okay. We were still stoked. That night opening the show was a band called the SKATENIGS. I do not remember seeing the SKATENIGS, so you'll have to forgive me, all you SKATENIGS fans. I just don't remember. By the way, see that cool picture there? That's an autographed flat from the very first Fear album cover that's autographed by Ving and Spit Sticks, the drummer. Just had to say that. So we file into the Metro later, the Cabaret Metro, a very famous rock and roll music venue in Chicago that's had many great punk rock bands over the years. And it is freaking packed. We're about at the very, back of the place, but we all make our way about to the middle of the place. And I took a bunch of photos. I was able to find one online. The band had a big banner behind the stage that said Fear, just like that right there. Huge letters. And on stage that night, when they hit the stage, everyone was throwing stuff and hurling insults because, Fear's the kind of band that likes to start trouble. Ving likes to incite a good riot. That night, he did not let us down. I can't exactly tell you what he said that night, but almost everything he said was an insult, something to piss people off or start some kind of trouble. And people were throwing stuff on stage. And I think at one point during that show, don't quote me on this, but I'm almost positive that they almost threatened to leave the stage at one point. I think it got pretty intense in Chicago. It was great though, man. I made some notes here. I can't lie. I don't want to forget anything because then I'll be pissed off when I get done going, oh, are you kidding? You do know the band Fear gained prominence in 1981 after their infamous performance on Saturday Night Live, in which a bunch of punk rockers were dancing around and they knocked the NBC cameras off the air. Yep, that happened. They were also famous for being in the Decline of Western Civilization film, which is a great film if you haven't seen that, guys. The very first one, which was the punk one. But there was Ving on stage in Chicago. He's got short black hair. He's got his cut-off black shirt with his no sleeves, sleeveless. He's got his guitar strapped on. The place is completely packed. We were pretty much inebriated. Everyone was drinking like crazy. People were heckling. Ving was being insulting, and they did not disappoint. That night, it was Ving on vocals and rhythm guitar, Spit Sticks, original drummer on the drums, Philo Kramer on the lead guitar. Too bad Durf Scratch was not there, however, on the bass. Instead was Scott Thunes that night. By the way, rest in peace to brother Durf Scratch, who did pass away July 28th, 2010 of liver disease. Little note of trivia, Durf Scratch was also a member of a band, many bands, but he was in a band called the Werewolves, and one of the band members in that band was Butch Patrick, who played Eddie Munster from the Munsters. Yep. Did you also know that Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers was the bass player for the band Fear from 1982 to 1984? Yep, or at least close to those years. He sure was. And I did hear that he quit the band because he got offended at some of the stuff Ving had said personally, and he was like over it. They were a mighty offensive band back in the day, though, Fear. Back then, you either took them real seriously or you just knew that they were a lot of shtick and you just you enjoyed it for being funny, But they were definitely cantankerous, rowdy, crap-starting people, Fear. It was a great band, man. And they still are. They're still doing it today. I got to tell you, I got the actual set list that night, and then I'm going to tell you what happened after the show. Yep. The story continues after the set list about the party and about going to White Castle. Thank you to Bill Meisner. Shout out to Bill Meisner for the great memories from this night because, like I say, mine are fuzzy, man. Like Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy had white hair. So that night, they played Gimme Some Action right into Ugly As You, and then F You, Let's Rodeo. And then they did a nice song called Public Hangings, Bad Day, Honor and Obey. Then they did Hey. And then, of course, a great one that's another very controversial Fear song, The Trouble with Women is the Mouth Don't Stop. No comment. Leaving. After that, they did Null Detector. Great song. Have a Beer with Fear, which is a classic. And then in the middle of the show, right after Christmas, of course, this is, like I say, the month of January 30th, 1993. They do their Christmas classic, F Christmas, which was a single that was released back in the day. And I used to love to play that on my Christmas radio show. Of course, the edited version, because you don't want to piss off the status quo, right? Wrong. We just don't want to get fined, right? Right. So after they did F Christmas, they went into Fresh Flesh. Love that song from the Record album. Then they did More Beer, title track from the More Beer album, which arguably some people think that's not really that good of an album. I like it. It's got a lot of classics on it, but it's never going to beat the original Fear, that album right there, The Record. After they did More Beer, they did Beef, 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 Beef Bologna, Beef, 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 Beef Bologna. Yeah. I got carried away, sorry. We Destroy the Family was next. God, I love that song. The whole place was going ape crap. People were moshing. People were throwing stuff on stage. People were yelling. Leaving was really getting people riled up. We were having a hell of a time. I just remember having my arms around my mates at that show and thinking, man, I'm at Fear with Beautiful Bert, Bill Meisner, and Dean Dirt. And there was other people from Kenosha there in Chicago. Again, sorry if I forgot you guys. Please let me know. I'd love to be reminded of who in the hell was actually there that night besides those legends. And rest in peace, Dean and Bert. Miss you guys. After they did We Destroy the Family, they did Foreign Policy into Waiting for the Meat. You gotta love a song called Waiting for the Meat. Beef Bologna, Waiting for the Meat. Is there a song about sausage next? Then they did I Don't Care About You. Probably one of the most well-known songs besides I Love Living in the City, which they did after I Don't Care About You. God, those lyrics are just classic. Just some of the best punk rock ever created. Then they did one of my very favorite Fear songs, New York's All Right If You Like Saxophones. What a great tune. It's got all these great sax in it. I don't remember who played sax on stage. My bad. Probably one of the guys in the band, I'm guessing, did. Maybe Ving. Hell if I know. Let me know in the comments if you know who played in Chicago in 1993 with Fear and did the sax parts on New York's All Right. Now, the band left the stage. We were all drunk and sweaty and ready to go party over at Bill Meisner's house, right? But they came back out and did an encore, which we didn't think they would because, well, Fear. But they did, man. And they came out and they did dun-da-da, a song called Let's Have a War, which is a great song by the band Fear. I remember getting out of there and sweating, and I couldn't wait to go back to Bill's because we all wanted to drink. When you're hanging out with the Kenosha, Wisconsin crowd, or pretty much any Wisconsin crowd that I've met, it's time to have some cold ones after the show, before the show, during the show, and probably while you're sleeping as well, right? Come on. If you're from Wisconsin, you know I'm not lying. So we went back to Bill Meisner's house where the beer was ready. We partied like madmen, which we kind of are and were, especially back then. Lots of people ended up showing up from the loft house, that loft building, friends and neighbors. It got very packed. It was a good party, and we really got drunk as heck. Some of us were tripping, not me. I was drinking. And that night at about 4 in the morning, 3:34 in the morning, we were all super famished. Like we had been partying all day. Nobody had bothered to eat food. We were all hungry, and we were all a bunch of hungry punk rockers, man. And I think it was Dean Dirt, I don't remember, that said, let's go to White Castle. And everyone's like, yeah. Now, I'd like to know who in the hell drove us to White Castle at 4 in the morning after partying all day and night in Chicago, all these freaking legends. And who the hell drove us to White Castle? I'd like to remember that. I don't know. But we get to White Castle, and Bill Meisner reminded me that we were completely out of it. Like, everyone was like, just, and I'm not, glorifying the effects of alcohol and, the other stuff, but it happened. And I definitely don't regret anything, but I don't suggest you live a life like that, because you'll end up like, well, never mind. You'll end up dead. Eventually, unless you clean your act up, son. So listen, we get to White Castle, and Dean Dirt walks up to the counter. You got to remember, this is one of the funniest human beings I've ever met. He's gone now, rest in peace. Physically, he's gone, but he's still here. He went up to the counter and was straight-faced and asked the lady if they had fetus burgers. Fetus burgers. And Bill Meisner said he remembers just laughing uncontrollably because he kind of one of those you had to be there moments. But I feel sorry for those poor people working at White Castle. We meant no harm. We were cool people, just a bunch of drunken, completely out of our mind, tripping lunatics. And I don't remember what we got, but probably way too much food, probably bags and bags of food. And I know it probably tasted real, real good. Do I have any notes that I need to tell you folks about? Not really, because I don't have anything else really to say about this story. I just remember, I think we went back to Bill's and passed out at the loft, and I couldn't tell you, but most likely that's what happened. And then the next day, we went back to our respective little shelters and waited for the next event. My friends, thank you for listening to this story. I wish you a great rest of your week. I will try to be back, tomorrow. The next day, the next day, the next day, the next day, the next setup, man. Anyway, cheers, rock and roll.